Hello, friends. I'm Nick Roush. This is 11 Personnel, No Huddle, presented by Monticello Bank. As always, today, doing things a little different. There's a lot of recruiting happening, and who better to talk recruiting than Justin Rowland? Justin, how many years is this now you've been doing Kentucky football recruiting?
I believe 2012 is when I started, so that's a good 14 years. It was only the second coach, though. First year of a new coach, so it feels very fresh, but it's been a hot minute.
Well, speaking of hot, they're pretty darn hot on the recruiting trail. So let's get to that. I do want to go back to that 2012-13 era for a moment, a little bit later on. But let's start with just the news that broke this morning. Kelsey Gerald, the running back from Florida, announced his commitment. You were all over this one. And he might not be the only running back this week. What are the Cats getting out of Gerald and potentially the addition on Saturday with Mason Ball announcing his decision?
You and Adam have done a great job on it as well. And it's pretty much on the surface. It looked like they were getting Gerald and Ball, and it seems like that's how it's playing out. And, I mean, you just watch the tape. It's pretty self-explanatory. They look like the kind of running backs you would have guessed an Oregon offensive coordinator coming in as a head coach would want. They're explosive, one cut, very seamless, little wasted motion, but he can lower his shoulder and he can create some separation. He runs with a mean streak, but the speed is really what pops. Like he can turn the court, he can beat linebackers to the edge, he can get through holes really quickly, and very explosive runner. So easy to see why Will Stein likes that.
Yeah, and this is a class 2 where they need multiple running backs. I mean, we saw what happened in the spring. They moved to safety to play the position, right? Because of just the health of it. And that's also how Stein wants to kind of roll them in and out, like just we're gonna keep guys fresh. We're gonna play multiple backs. So getting 2 in the full would be significant. Here's the other thing that would be significant too. That would get them to 18. Only 3 programs as of right now, I believe it's UCLA, Oklahoma, and Penn State have more. That's all. That's a lot of commits. That's a lot of players. So, do you still see where there's room to add a few more big fish? Because what's next is sort of the big push in the month of June to kind of get some of those big fish to commit during official visit season.
Yeah, Nick, it's crazy, man. When the class started out, I was thinking, they're probably only going to take like 20 guys, right? Because it's still a new staff, and you got to figure they want to make the roster how they want to make the roster. So leave a lot of spots for the portal. But if you look at like how many commits they have and then the sheer number of guys that are in line, you put the list out Adam has with the sheer number of official visitors, I think it's going to be a pretty sizable class. And maybe they're expecting some of the guys that are committed to maybe have to have a decision to make later on, but they're going to get more commits than I expected them to. And definitely some big fish out there. I mean, you think of Xavier Muhammad on the defensive line, some of the big offensive linemen that they're still punching up for. They're going to add another running back. There's still work to do at receiver. There's a couple of linebackers that are still on the board. They got Miles Brown at corner, but I'd imagine they'll take another corner. I think every position group is accounted for, but there are some where they might take 1 or 2 more guys. Yeah.
Yeah, like Corey Randolph is a defensive lineman in the trenches we're watching, but you need more than one sort of deal. Offensive line, Dominic Black and Reed Gherkin, those are 2 Ohio guys that are highly regarded that I think Kentucky is kind of in the lead for both, but you got to get to the closing table, right? Like Indiana is now recruiting the state of Ohio. They just won a national championship.
Yeah.
The one that I think at linebacker, you see Drew Williams and then J.J. Mayfield.
Yeah.
And Mayfield strikes me as the type, Justin, where it's almost like every visit he goes on, they immediately become his favorite. That's tale as old as time. But I feel like if they get one of those, then you feel really good, particularly just defensively. I know we talked a lot about Will Stein, feed the studs the offense. This defensive class looks pretty solid. I mean, hell, I really like Miles Brown. Like that, you tell me you get a 4-sport athlete who like returns kicks, plays receiver. I mean, he almost had 1,000 yards receiving as a sophomore. Like, sign me up.
Nick, when I watched his tape at receiver, you see him catch it, and the way he just flips his hips up the field, you're like, man, that's a cornerback. Like just as a receiver, you see him one motion, no steps. He just Right around. That's what you're, and flipping those hips is what you're looking for as a cornerbacks coach. I love Marquise Bryant out of North Carolina. I think he's got some honey badger qualities. He is a turnover forcing machine. He's a headhunter. He's got a knack for stepping into passing lanes and just kind of seeing where eyes are on the field. And I think Jake Bateman's going to love being aggressive with him. Yeah, I mean, it's a good class. They got to get another cornerback. Drew, you mentioned J.J. Mayfield, and he's a stud out of North Carolina. He liked Kentucky, and then he liked Indiana, and then he likes Kentucky. Wherever he's been seems to get a little bit of a surge. But Drew Williams is another one you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, the people that are recruiting Drew Williams, think that he is undervalued. I'll put it like that. The teams that are recruiting him believe they're recruiting him like he's a 5-star player, and the athleticism is definitely there. So, but again, you're looking at two main guys at linebacker. That shows you they're most of the way to the finish line.
Well, and Drew Williams, he announced his finalists yesterday, and it's 3 playoff teams in Kentucky. Like it's like all the big names. I think the edge position, that's one we didn't address. But I do find it interesting where Tony Washington is like, I like TK Cunningham all the way out in Arizona.
Yeah.
Which I don't know, like there's just something if it feels so unusual that I'm like, there's got to be something here that other people aren't seeing. Now, he still is big game hunting. And for some other, I know there's the kid that's in your neck of the woods in Missouri that he's recruiting, and his name escapes me right now. But also Sean Fox out of Indianapolis, Warren Central, is kind of like a hybrid type that could be an edge, could be a inside-outside linebacker. That one, I mean, like it's basically Kentucky versus Notre Dame. Feels like for that one. So Tony Washington is one of those guys that we haven't we've mentioned as like this guy looks like he knows what the hell he's doing, but there's I still don't think we've seen him at full force. I know he got Antoine Higgins out of Cincinnati, but I think there is some real heavy hitter capabilities he's got that we haven't seen yet.
No doubt. Yeah. I mean, well, let's think about the reality of it. Like Tony Washington has not been an on-field assistant in the same way that like Chad Wilt has. And Chad Wilt has a decade of experience of on-field experience, but Tony Washington is the on-field coach. And as soon as that board came together, it was obvious, like he has a recruiting plan. Like some guys, you got 1 or 2 targets and occasionally you hear about them and there's an update here, an update there. Tony Washington has like a pool of 8 or 9 or 10 guys that Kentucky is top 3, 4, 5 for. So he's got the top end guys, the Santana Harveys, the Justin Weeks, those guys. But he's also got down the board. You can see the logic of it. I'm gonna take a shot at these guys, but then I've got these guys that I feel really good about. And he got a ton of guys in to visit in the spring. He's got a ton of guys coming in for official visits in the summer. Chris Collins on the last staff was really good at getting guys on campus, and that's one bellwether of how good somebody is as a recruiter.
Before we move on to some questions, I think there's something I'd like to bring up because a lot of people see what's happening and they get, oh my gosh, Kentucky's never recruited like this before. I do want to remind people that Mark Stoops had the number 1 class for like 3 or 4 days back in 2014.
Yeah.
And that class had some flops, no doubt about it. Like Matt Elam and Drew Barker were not what we thought they would be. But Denzel Ware started for multiple years. Mike Edwards is in the 300 tackle club. I think he's the only Mark Stoops player that's in it. One of the best safeties that's played here. Boom Williams, multi-year starter. Juice Johnson, top 5, and he's got a bunch of UK records. Like they had Darius West was in that class, I believe, too. There was a lot of really good players in that class. So I think it's a disservice to Mark Stoops to say that this sort of recruiting isn't completely unprecedented. Like it has happened like this before, but there's 2 things that I think are significantly different. And the first one is that really like they kind of push all their chips in Ohio. Whereas like Justin, you get to tap all your old North Carolina sources,
Yeah. The DMV is back in focus. Yeah.
And it's very much like they're still doing Ohio and Kentucky, but it's like we're going to do Tennessee and we're going to branch out into areas like the DMV. So that part of it feels different. And it's also different, too, that it's the full staff. Whereas you definitely could say that about Neil Brown early on, but a lot of it was like Neil Brown, Vince, and John Sharman pretty much did like all of the recruiting. Whereas like it is pretty equitable, and I think that's you got to commend Stein for hiring a very like a staff where pretty much everybody has to check that recruiting box to be a part of it.
Yeah, no doubt. Vince carried a lot of water and weight on the last staff, but it is a team effort this time around. And I think it's a better approach. I think it's more of a professional approach. It's less about one person needing to do this or one place needs to get you that many players. It's a national player selection search. And with NIL, you're essentially purchasing players from wherever you want. You got so many support staff members. There's no trouble maintaining these relationships. Yeah, I think they're still going to be strong in Ohio, but like you said, the DMV is back in Illinois. They're having success in Illinois. That's a place they need to be recruiting because every player there is going to know who Kentucky's quarterback of the future is. And so they got some room there. Georgia, Alabama, places where they're having some success too. So it's always going to be tricky because Kentucky doesn't have that in-state core. And what was good about Ohio was you kind of made Ohio in-state recruiting territory. And what that does is you can bank on every year we're going to be able to get 10 to 12 players locally. There are other ways to do it. And I think the best recruiting of the Stoops era was when they weren't getting 15 players from Ohio too. I think it was better when they were getting those guys from Michigan and those guys from Georgia and those guys from Alabama. You got to go all over.
You mentioned Jake Nara. We got 11 minutes into a video without talking about Kentucky having the second-ranked quarterback in the country. That I think is the other big difference is that Drew Barker was a very highly touted guy. I'm not trying to critique him that much, but like he really drew the attention from what he did in the spring, like away from the football field. I mean, that high school he played for, I don't think they made it past the third round. You know, like he wasn't really lighting it up. Whereas like Nara, he was a JV quarterback in his first year starting, absolutely lit it up in a state where, I mean, like Izzy Abrams is lighting it up too, and he had better numbers than him. So, like, what are your overall thoughts on Narod and what he can be as a passer?
I think Narod is a better prospect than Barker was. Like, put it like this on Barker. Barker was I think he was at the Elite 11, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he was in the conversation. Well, I will say Barker was among the better quarterbacks in his class. I don't think that there was a serious case that Barker was like possibly number one. Whereas I think Narod is more that guy that you look at him as a high schooler and say, wow, he could be an NFL quarterback. He's got a lot of NFL qualities. Yeah, he's a franchise quarterback.
Which is fun to say out loud. Like it really is because Stoops was playing on Heisman mode without a top-notch quarterback, and having a guy like Jake Nara can really raise your ceiling as a program.
You see, it's a completely different approach to building a program. They went from the quarterback being the thing that befuddled them, and we've got to get this as a cherry on top while the rest of the team is already set. Maybe we get a JUCO, maybe we get whoever is willing to do this, essentially, we're going to take. And now you start in the middle at the quarterback position and you build around him. One thing I will say, Stoops did recruit great. It was September. They were number one. Texas was number two. I do think that staff was paying attention to the rankings. I will say that. One thing that I think is different now is I think this staff really is doing more of their own evaluations.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the last staff didn't do their evaluations, but if there was a 4-star that was available under the last regime, I think they would have gotten a little twinkle in their eye and they would have seen the class ranking and there would be that little pull to it. So less so now.
Oh, man. All right, let's get to some questions from our friends at KS Board. But first, I need to remind you about our friends at BetMGM. The NBA playoffs are happening right now. NHL playoffs, no St. Louis Blues. It's got Justin singing the St. Louis Blues right now. But the Carolina Hurricanes, they're rocking and rolling, and you can get rocking and rolling with the BetMGM app. Make this playoff season legendary by signing up today. Just put in that bonus code on3 whenever you sign up, and you're going to get a $1,500 sign-up bonus. That means however much money you put in for your first bet, up to $1,500. If it doesn't win, you're getting that back in bonus bets, plus 50% off an On3 College Sports Network subscription. That means you get to see all of Justin's great content on KSR Plus, on KS Board, House of Blue, We've got it all, and you can have it all. Make sure this is a legendary summer with BetMGM. Just use that bonus code on3 to get your sign-up bonus today. See BetMGM.com for terms, 21 plus only. Promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Got a gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER in the U.S., 1-877-8-HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. That first bet offers for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. All right, SEC first. He's a big recruiting guy on both House of Blue and KS Board. He had two prospects to ask about. Malachi Brown at Corbin, and is it what was the Amarius Jones? I already lost his name. Oh man, I had it right in front of my face. How do we not?
I saw it, and when I saw it, nothing rang a bell. So I'm going to speak mostly on Malachi Brown. I know they're recruiting him. I've heard that they're recruiting him, and that was actually relatively recent. But there have been some questions as to, I don't really know how to phrase it in terms of just they have to do a little bit more background work, and it could be the kind of thing that goes a few more months before a decision is ultimately made by him and also by Kentucky. There are other schools involved, but the important thing is I think he is an option, and he's worth continuing to ask about, but we're going to post about him when we've got something
right
to go on. Yeah.
Emerson Lewis was the other player.
I don't think he's a corner that we mentioned earlier in the spring, and I don't think he's as much Joshua Vilmail is the corner that people need to be watching really closely. He's visiting this summer. Yeah.
And I think the pivot to Miles Brown was sort of the move there, which I don't think was necessarily a bad idea whatsoever.
Not at all.
Okay, this is a good question. Realistically, what are the chances that Kentucky can land 5-star Kellen Hall from Cal?
Yeah. What do you think? What's your first instinct on that, man?
So
I think they got some ground to make up.
I think they do, because Seneca Driver is another person that people have asked about quite a bit.
Yeah.
Seneca Driver feels like we'll get to, I don't know, maybe is it the LSU game in October, and all of a sudden he shows up on campus, and like you think, all right, well maybe there's a chance that if they do some stuff, they can make it happen. But in Seneca Driver's case, I think they just were too far behind the 8 ball because of the last staff to sort of really make staying home as like the thing he wanted, right? I think they have a chance with Kellen Hall. I really do, because it's early enough in the process. And I think the relationships by this coaching staff really, and his coaching staff at Cal, I think really matter quite a bit. Now, there's a long way to go, right? We're going to be writing about this kid for a very long time. But everything I've heard from Kentucky side, from his side, from the high school side, like Kentucky is going to be among the contenders, but it's all heavy hitters, JR, between A&M, Ohio State, Georgia, I think Ole Miss. I just would tell you that the good news is that as these kind of 5 schools change, I think Kentucky is going to be a constant throughout. It's just what happens between now and next fall, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot can change between now and then. Yeah,
you just got to hang around now, and then. But here's the thing in the NIL era: there's different ways to build a team, and you have I guess the key that everybody needs to focus on is how much money is available, and we don't know that as media and fans, but it's conceivable that Kentucky doesn't get Kellen Hall, and it's still okay, because that's money that you're not putting into Kellen Hall. That's money you're putting into somebody else. We can just go buy somebody else. We can go buy a different position. So now that money is, and I say money for a reason. I don't know for sure what Seneca Driver made, but I've heard that a top player from the state that Kentucky recruited is going elsewhere for 2 years for about $1.3 million. Okay. And a lot of these high school contracts are 2-year deals now. Do you really want to give a tight end from high school $1.23 million for his freshman and sophomore years of college? Are you going to get $1.3 million of production from a true freshman and a true sophomore tight end in the SEC? Or are you better off spending $600,000 on an offensive guard who's going to be a senior and $600,000 on a cornerback who's going to be a junior? It's a fair question. Because a guy after 2 years of $1.3 million, that's another contract year before his best year of college football. Are you even going to be able to keep him then? I'm not convinced Josh Allen would have ever been a senior football player at Kentucky in the NIL era, because after that 4th year, he would have commanded a $3 million payday. And so it's just how you're building the team now. You're thinking about it totally different. But Kellen Hall is visiting Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, and Oregon this summer. So if you want him, you know what that recruitment is going to be about. And you just have to you better be damn sure that that's the priority that you want to make, that you are building around him, because that's where the money's going.
And that's something I'm glad you said it that way, because that is how they have to have these conversations over there in the front office between Pat Biondo, Pete Nocta. Like, it's resource allocation. And we know Kentucky has resources, but you better be spending them in the right way. Before we go, all right, over under 23 and a half players in the 2017 recruiting class.
I'm going to say over, man. You say they're at 18 now? How many are they at? 18 now?
They could get up to 18 this weekend, yeah.
And it looks like about 100 players are taking official visits this summer. I mean, I have to believe they're shooting over that mark just with the length of these summer visitor lists. I think it's going to be a big class.
Yeah, I think 26 is probably about the max.
Yeah.
Because, we'll see a lot of moving and shaking.
Yeah. That's a lot in the portal era. Yeah.
Is there you get to wave a magic wand, and one of these official visitors you're just like, all right, you're joining the class. Which one are you picking? Is it Tyler Fryman? Is it one of the linebackers? Is it one of one of these receivers, one of these offensive linemen?
I mean, if I could pick any of them, that's a great question. Maybe Xavier Muhammad. There's a couple of offensive linemen like Antonio Berry and Caden Moss that I feel like if you could get, that's a no-brainer. But right. of the guys that have been frequently mentioned, Xavier Muhammad, big-time impact defensive lineman. Jalathan Mayfield, like you mentioned, he's an impact, great athlete linebacker that would thrive for Bateman. And then maybe like a top receiver, it looks like they're going to have a really good receiver class with a bunch of like strong options, but if they could get like a really high end receiver, that would move the needle as well.
Oh man. Great stuff though, Justin. Yeah. I know you're going to be in Lexington. We're going to be covering some of these camps and all the official visits this summer. If you aren't checking out his work, join KSR Plus. It's $1 for the first week, 50% off your first year. It's been a lot of fun hanging out with you on the House of Blue and KS Sport, and it's been a lot of fun hanging out today.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on, Nick. You and Adam are doing a great job as well. We'll do it again.
Yeah, definitely. It's that time of year. It's that time of year.
Right. We've got some kid graduations coming up today, but a little football sprinkle in.
Oh, gosh, and there it comes. Oh, man, there it came. I held it in for 30 minutes. I couldn't get much longer. All right, Justin, have a good day. We'll see you around.
Yeah, take care.